Yeah, it's Zach, stepping up to the game, living life prepared, I'm not here for the fame. With a plan in my hand, gotta make it alright. Through the storms and the struggles, I'm ready to fight. Prepare for the worst while I aim for the best. Zach's unique prepping, we're reaching new heights. Living strong and ready, we're chasing the lights. With courage as armor, we'll conquer the day. Together we rise, we'll fight our own way. Stacking knowledge and skills, I'm building my base. In this world of chaos, I'm finding my space. No fear in the hustle, I'm sharpening my tools. When the world brings the waves, I'm breaking the rules. Stand tall, keep grinding, never lose sight. Yeah. Zach's unique prepping, we're reaching new heights. Living strong and ready, we're chasing the lights. With courage as armor, we'll conquer the day. Together we rise, we'll find our own way. We'll find our own way. Stand tall, keep grinding, never lose sight. Zach in knowledge and skills, I'm building my base. In this world of chaos, I'm finding my space. No fear in the hustle, I'm sharpening my tools. When the world brings the waves, I'm breaking the rules. Stand tall, keep grinding, never lose sight. Never lose sight. Yeah, stand tall, keep grinding, never lose sight. Let's break every chain, with Zach in the lead. We'll never feel pain, never feel pain, never feel pain. With Zach in the lead, we'll never feel pain, never feel pain, never feel pain. With Zach in the lead, we'll never feel pain. With Zach in the lead, we'll never feel pain. With Zach in the lead, we'll never feel pain. We'll never feel pain, we'll never feel pain. We'll never feel pain.
Welcome to Unique Prepping. My name is Zach, and I'm here to show you that no matter the challenges we face, like my own experience with cerebral palsy, we can all be prepared. Prepping isn't just about survival, it's about independence, confidence, and community. You see, prepping is for everyone. It's about taking control of our future, no matter our limitations. Here on Unique Prepping, I'll share tips, techniques, and strategies that anyone can use, regardless of ability. Together, we'll build a community where everyone contributes, learns, and grows stronger. So, whether you're a seasoned prepper or just getting started, join me on this journey. Let's empower ourselves and unite to create a better, more resilient future. Because in this community, everyone has a role to play. Good afternoon, our prepping community, and welcome to the 18th installment of Unique Prepping's community. On today's episode, we will be discussing the school system and why we need to get it reformed. I'm your producer, host, and community member Unique Prepping, and with me is our wonderful community member Lady Hamilton. In the description, I put her Rumble account. Please go give her a follow and help our community keep going. She's also a headmaster of Hamilton Liberty Academy, which removes the ideology of public schools push. How are you, and could you talk about the academy? Why did you start this?
Well, hi, Zach. Thank you for having me today. Hello, everyone. Why did I start my academy? Well, first and foremost, I have 3 disabled children myself. And I saw this, and it's funny because I always say this is really God's decision. But I have seen this not only with my own children, but going through colleges. It was really interesting where I was sent, and I was ended up in, at NYU. I'm not NYU, at Columbia, at Teachers College. So I've seen this kind of manipulation for our education from my own children's perspective, from the university's perspective, from teaching teachers' perspective. And then I worked 1 year in the public system when I said, okay, and that was during COVID. And I was like, oh, this is horrible. And I was teaching 11th and 12th graders who couldn't read. and who couldn't do math and couldn't do any of this. I was like, okay, they didn't know anything about the next steps forward, scholarships, anything. They had no idea where they were going to go. And so it was really interesting because one night in the middle of the night, I always say God just woke me up and he gave me some inspiration about you're going to open a school. And I was like, what? I laughed. I'm going to open a school. And you're like, what do you want me to do? And through that kind of inspiration, 3 months later, I had my school. And it was very interesting how he had me set it up to avoid what we're going to talk about today. So it's online, it's nationwide. It got accredited, the first in, like history that I was able to kind of jump the line or get approval so fast. But it's also art integrated, working with children, all kinds of aspects, since we don't all learn the same. And we could talk about that a little bit more if you'd like to, but it was really even how I've opened up, the nonprofit. It's not your typical 501c3, but everything to avoid these laws and mandates that we are seeing in our education today. And so that started in 2021, and we are rolling out our 4th year this year. Right, right. It is quite the adventure. Say hello to all you guys.
That's good, and I'm doing great. Thank you for joining me on a really important topic in today's society. We're tackling an issue that affects every family and the future of our children, the school system. For decades, education has been seen as the foundation for a brighter tomorrow, but more and more parents, teachers, and students are noticing cracks in that foundation. From controversial curriculums pushing questionable ideologies to the neglect of essential life skills, the system is failing to equip students with what they need to succeed in the real world. Today, we're going to break it down, explore the root of the problems, and discuss how we can work together to reform an outdated and broken system. Let's dive deep into how we can protect our children's future by making education about knowledge, values, and life skills once again. Stay with us as we take on one of the most important issues facing our community today. Do you have anything to add before we start?
No, go ahead, because I'm sure we're going to answer a lot of things, and I will be putting links in the comments and stuff for you guys to look for yourself, because I always say research for yourself. You don't necessarily have to believe me, but I come with proof of what I say today.
Question number 1. What are the biggest challenges you see in today's school system, and how do they affect our children's future?
Okay, so this is on a multiple prong here, everybody. Number 1, our reading and our math. A lot of people think that we are behind because of COVID. They like to blame that, that we were shut down for 1 year, so all of a sudden our kids are decades behind, when this has actually been happening for decades, that our children are behind. A lot of that problem that stems, and there's a lot of things that stem this, but one of those is that no child left behind. And we see that, I hate to say this, but I think COVID in some aspects was a huge eye opener, especially for parents, because all of a sudden you're seeing what the kids are learning, and then they get these passes, a pass or a fail. And that means they could even get a 40 or 50%, and they're still going to pass them. We're going to keep no child left behind, instead of making sure they have the essentials they need to go forward. Something else I've seen too is they are pulled out of these foundational classes so they can go to what's called social emotional learning classes and things like that, and these are really bad, especially when you're talking about foundational classes. And I think number 1, reading is your most important thing, even over math, because if you don't know your numbers, right, you can't read your numbers and you can't do math. So reading is vital to every single child, right? And being able to not pass that level. I mean, I'd love for you to stay with your classmates and stuff, but if you're struggling that bad, and that also falls on our teachers, right, in our educational system, but what are we doing wrong? So that is really interesting for me to learn, and I saw that with my own children. My son is blind, and their aspect of that, even though they got an extra funding, and we're talking thousands of dollars extra per an IEP, the school system's idea was we're just going to put him in front of a TV because he's not going to amount to anything. I mean, they literally told us that through an IEP meeting, right? And I have this philosophy of all youth are possible. That's my slogan, everyone. All youth are possible. And I do not believe that. And I was able to teach him through different aspects of, he can go through voice recognition, be able to speak to a computer and it can type for him. And he was able to start doing things like writing his own stories. And so what stops him from being the creative writer that he wants to be? So this is the difference that I'm talking about. Their idea of, you're going to be nothing, we're going to soak up your money and just keep passing you, versus giving you a pathway to your future that's successful and your dream. That's one of the problems. Another problem that everybody is seeing right now is this curriculum. And we see it and we're very, very worried. You might have heard of stuff like CRT, SEL, and this pronoun, this agenda that we're seeing here, the children changing their body parts, right? We're going to teach you this in preschool level. And I know that that's starting in Head Start, because I have researched that. And I have an actual neighbor whose 5-year-old was given this information at kindergarten, right? To start thinking about that instead of worrying about this. And I'm going to say this really clearly, because I know we're on YouTube. When you're an adult, I may not agree with your choice, but you have the freedom to go make your own choices. But to do this to our little ones, instead of teaching them the foundations to be successful or have the critical mind to make that choice themselves, hopefully after research, how dare we? Right? How dare we? And so, right, I started deep diving into this and found out that this is through a law, everyone. This DEI movement is through a law called Title IX. And if you want me to show this, Zach, if you want me to show these links, I can share them with you, or I could drop them in the comments. You want me to show you? Okay. And so we can see this agenda. Now, this law was created in 1972 to be for our sexual discrimination. And that's all great. But how it's manipulated throughout the years and how our current administration has manipulated it to include it into our curriculum, to me, I find horrifying, because we should focus on foundations versus this kind of craziness. So let me show you what I'm talking about here, everyone. This comes from the U.S. Department of Education. Is that popping up? There we go. The U.S. Department of Education confirms that Title IX, which is a law, everyone, it's a law, it's not a mandate or a suggestion, right, protects students from discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. This is where we get this inclusion from, right, that they continue to go on. And again, we don't want to discriminate on it, but how this is manipulated into teaching this inclusion to our children and starting to mess with their ideals of who they are from kindergarten on, right? And this goes to say here that is sexual orientation or gender identity without discriminating against a person. So we got to teach these kids what even gender identity is, right? The Supreme Court has upheld the right for this, right? And again, we're not talking about harassment or exclusion or discrimination, but now it is put into our curriculum to teach our children and talk to them that they can change who they are. They can be different, heaven forbid that we teach them that they're wonderful, whoever they are, right? I have a big problem against that too, because I want our youth to feel that they are perfect exactly who they are, and they are going to be possible no matter what. Now, if they want to do this, like I said, in an adult, whether I agree with that decision or not, but let them do that and make that path and that choice then. Our school system should really be about teaching our kids about these. So there's two things going on here, and that is one of them, or that is two of them.
One of the most pressing concerns in today's school system is the promotion of ideologies that seem to push the boundaries of childhood innocence. Schools, in many places, are introducing topics related to gender identity and sexual orientation at a very young age, often without fully informing parents or giving them a say. What used to be discussions reserved for parents and family is now being taught in classrooms, sometimes starting in elementary schools. This trend raises serious questions about whether these topics are appropriate for young children and how they impact their development. The push for gender fluidity and the idea that biological sex is not fixed is creating confusion for many students. Some feel pressured to question their identity or conform to ideas they don't fully understand. These issues are often presented in a way that suggests there's only one right way to think, which leaves little room for personal or family beliefs. Parents are increasingly finding themselves on the sidelines, fighting to protect their values and ensure that their children aren't forced into a worldview they don't agree with. The emphasis on these social issues takes valuable time away from traditional learning subjects like math, science, and history. As the school system becomes more focused on identity politics, students may be missing out on critical knowledge and skills that will help them succeed in life. Schools should be a place for academic excellence, not ideological indoctrination, but it seems the balance has shifted too far in one direction. We're seeing an erosion of family values as schools take on the role of moral educators. Many parents feel disrespected when schools override their authority, and it's causing a growing divide between families and educators. This breakdown in communication leads to distrust and frustration, making it harder for parents to engage in their children's education in a meaningful way. The long-term effects of this are concerning. If the education system continues to push social agendas over academics, we could see a generation of young adults who are ill-prepared for real-life challenges. Children need clear guidance and a strong foundation in academic subjects and life skills, not confusion over who they are at such an impressionable age. The school system should focus on fostering an environment where students feel safe to learn, grow, and question, without being force-fed political or social ideologies. It's time to return to the basics, empowering students with the knowledge and tools to succeed in life. UP out.
Right. I absolutely agree with that. It's so important that, again, that we teach our children from the word go that they are wonderful no matter who they are. And they do this, they manipulate and they teach us kind of confusion. Can you imagine? I mean, what they're saying to it, like I said, I have personal experience of a 5-year-old, that you're already telling them you're not wonderful from the word go, that you are, we've got to completely confuse you. And if they're confused with who they are, how are they, and they're so disorientated, how do they even focus on what they need to learn if they're even learning the basics, right? Our foundations, because they're already thinking I'm a terrible, I'm not perfect how I am, I need to change who I am, I need to change everything about me, right? How horrible is this to tell our children that they are basically born that way? And I find it's no place for a school to be basically doing this. And especially that, even though it's starting younger and younger to kind of get them into this manipulation, they really focus on middle schoolers, because at that time, you guys remember when you're in middle school, right? You already, my body's gross, everything about me, my friends hate me today. I mean, it's a confusing time, right? Your hormones are going crazy. So that is a real critical time that they push really hard on, well, you're unhappy with who you are, you know that you can change, right? Well, maybe you're uncomfortable in your body. Maybe that's because you don't feel like you're a girl or a boy. Right. So they really enhance that time in middle school, which is really terrible. But it is starting younger and younger. I just interviewed with the Head Start program, and I do this, guys, just so I can find out and research myself, that they're introducing this at 3 years old at the Head Start programs with the pronouns and the gender ideology. I mean, good grief, shouldn't 3-year-olds just be figuring out how to make friends, learning their numbers, their ABC, right? No, we got to tell you that you're already in the wrong body at 3 years old. I mean, it is madness. And so I absolutely agree. And it's horrifying. It seems like, even though this has started decades ago, it's like it's ramped up on steroids now. And we all got to see that during COVID. Thank heavens, like I said, because that was a huge awakening. When all of a sudden your parents are reading the homework because teachers were MIA, right? And they're like, I'm sorry, what? Or a math problem that tells you that we're dividing you. You're racially incapable of having a future, right? Because you live in the hood or whatever, and you're a minority. My children are minorities. I'm sorry. How wonderful it is for you to have a future just like everyone else. This is what America used to be. I'd like to see that, that way where we can all be possible and have that dream. But you're already telling them in math story problems or whatever that you're not going to succeed to anything, just like they did with my son. You're blind. You're never going to amount to anything. And it was taking him down every single time. He's like, I'm not going to. And I had to work so hard to tell him, you can do anything you want to do. I mean, the future is wide open for you. And this is what we should be doing, our education system, not condemning our children for having a dream. That's right. And I'm just reading some of the comments here. You're right. They need to be, teachers should just be teaching them math as math. I agree with that. Instead of having division built into problems. I absolutely agree that too. And yes. Look at Zach. Isn't he proof that all is possible? Just saying.
My birth doctor told my parents that I wouldn't amount to anything because I was born dead.
See? And here you are, rocking and rolling, having a podcast and teaching others how they can be possible. Right? My son is in college writing stories and plays and whatever. I'm like, and he was supposed to not amount to anything. This is exactly why I do what I do. That's right. This is one of the reasons, again, why I opened up my school, because I saw the same thing. I mean, and especially history. History can be manipulated or lost, and we repeat history so much. But if we don't have that knowledge, how do we tend to avoid it? And that goes for everything, not just education, as we can see here, too, as they manipulate history. So we're like, I'm sorry, I mean, and half of our middle school students and up, they don't even believe like the Holocaust was real. I mean, how they take things out. What are foundations of America? They take that out. They don't have that. Instead they go to like the social emotional learning. What's terrifying about that is we're raising children to base their decisions on emotions versus critical thinking and logic. And how horrible is that? I mean, to have your whole life decided on an emotional response versus something that is logical or thought through. But I personally teach, that's one of the things I teach is history in my own school, because I'm like, oh no, we are bringing that back, right? It's so important to learn about our past so that we have successful futures as well. Question 2. Okay.
Question number 2. Do you think the current education system prepares students for real-world skills, like managing finances or critical thinking? Why or why not?
No, they don't. And I have prime example of that. Not only, like I said, with my own kids, but no, when I was teaching in the public system, I was the art teacher. And I was literally showing them, like, we have a fashion week, right? And I kind of do this art history thing, even though I was an art teacher. And we'd have this fashion thing. And it was about a third month in. And they couldn't even read the number 10,000. I thought maybe they'd say, look at how much these shoes are, guys. And I thought they would say like 10K or 10 grand or whatever. 10000 was the response I got. I go, I'm sorry, what number is that? If they could even read, because a lot of them were like, oh, I don't want to read that, Miss Hamilton, or whatever. And I understand the embarrassment because they didn't have the ability to read thoroughly, or they couldn't read their numbers. And then so as I got to know these students too, I was like, so what are you going to do with your future? What do you know? Where's your pathway forward? Number one, they didn't even know like the next steps into being an adult. They didn't know how to handle their own personal budgets. They didn't know how to find college scholarships and grants, whether it's for college, trade school, or build your own business. They didn't know how to balance their own checkbook. They knew nothing about your basic with sewing, cooking, automotive, none of that. That's all gone, right? What we call like home ec or whatever, but they have no civics. They have no economics. And I was like, oh my gosh. So on Fridays, in my free time as the art teacher, I was teaching these students how to create their own businesses, how to balance their own budgets, how to find and write personal statements so they could get grants to go to the schools of their choice. And they're like, oh, Miss Hamilton, nobody does this, right? And I was like, Okay, so in my school, one of the most important things I created was what we call Adulting 101, and it's something our 12th graders have to take. It's one of those mandatory electives. But throughout the year, each month changes from your own personal budget to a cooking or maybe automotive. Also, how to write a personal statement, how to volunteer, how to find those scholarships to those three paths I just said. We have a business planning program in our economics class, which teaches you how to build your own business. We have, of course, how to do your LSATs and your SATs and all that kind of prep too, but giving these kids every avenue forward so that when they leave or they move forward, they're not still stuck in the same neighborhood. They can choose their own path and feel prepared to do so. But this is why I'm saying this does not exist. And building that idea of how we look for different things. Like I said, I taught like an art history class. I might counteract me, research it, think for yourself. What's your actual opinion? Do not Google it and give me an answer. Just spit it out. I don't care if you're wrong or not. At least you're thinking about it. You're getting those motor skills going, right? That logical step of critically thinking about a subject. And so we incorporate this at least in my school. And I found that it was exactly missing. And I thought about that. I'm like, why would they want to do that? Well, if they can keep your kids just based on emotion, no logical or critical thinking, they're just lockstep. How easy is it to manipulate their point of view? If you can do that. I mean, social media does a great job with that too, especially with our youth. But the school systems, if we can just build your brains to think that whatever you're told is right, then you never think for yourselves. And it's like, now we're seeing this in our future too, and you're like, oh my gosh, and call me selfish, but I do not want these kids looking after me when I'm old, right? And they're built their whole life based off of decision-making on emotions. So this is something that does not exist. And one of the things the students would tell me too, is that no one told them about these pathways. No one prepared them. There were very few things like maybe, and I love my military, don't get me wrong. And my father is retired of that too, but they could join the military and that might be a pathway for education. Or, hey, you could go work, maybe for a Walmart, maybe you could somewhat internship, but there was really nothing going, you could get a full ride. What do you mean you're a girl that's into music and science? That you can get a full ride to go to college? Or my nephew who makes $100-something an hour is a welder and there's scholarships for that too. I mean, there's none of that anymore. And it's really alarming. Thank you, Blue Rose. I appreciate that.
Unfortunately, the current education system does not adequately prepare students for real-world skills. In fact, it often does the opposite by focusing too heavily on standardized tests and concepts like Common Core, which detract from more practical learning. Rather than teaching students how to think critically or manage finances, the system has turned into a place where students memorize and regurgitate information just to pass a test. Common Core, for example, has been criticized for its overly complicated methods, particularly in math. Instead of teaching students straightforward problem-solving techniques, the curriculum tends to prioritize convoluted processes that don't make sense to many learners. Parents are often left scratching their heads, wondering why the simplest concepts are now more difficult for their children to grasp. This, in turn, leads to frustration and hinders real understanding.
Okay, I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Another major issue is the growing emphasis on emotional intelligence and social-emotional learning, SEL, often at the expense of academic rigor. While emotional health is important, schools are placing too much emphasis on feelings over facts. This creates an environment where students are more concerned with not offending others than they are with actual learning. It's a slippery slope, where fear of stepping on toes could undermine a student's ability to ask questions, challenge ideas, and engage in critical thinking. Many schools have also cut back on life skills education, like how to manage money, cook, or even basic car maintenance. These are the skills that young adults need when they graduate, yet they're often left to figure them out on their own. Instead of learning how to budget or file taxes, students are being taught to follow their feelings, which doesn't equip them for the realities of adult life. The education system should be a place that fosters both academic excellence and practical life skills. We need to stop coddling students and instead encourage them to think for themselves, solve real-world problems, and be prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. It's time to shift the focus back to education that matters: critical thinking, problem solving, and real-world applications. UP out.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because my own kids, remember, I saw firsthand with my kids, and they would sit there and spend all week long taking pre-tests to pass a test, sitting in front of a computer, because we think that our kids are learning from a teacher, and they still have the Google Pads, or the iPads, or what do they have, and the Chromebooks, and they're still already on a computer. So all they're doing is taking pre-tests, and I was like, I can remember complaining. I was like, are you serious? So all my kids are doing is doing pre-test to pass a test. Now, the reason for that is one of the ways that they get the scores to continue to get their funding. And I was like, oh my gosh, but the scores are so bad that they have to continue, like memorize, so that they can pass these tests so the schools get their funding. And I'm with you guys. Common Core is a joke. Instead of teaching 1 + 1 is 2, let's break that down 5 different ways where I confuse the kid. And it might be 2, maybe it's 5. I don't know. That's possible, right? I mean, it is a joke. And one of the things too, I want you guys to know too, is you can go to your school. Like, we broke up CRT, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, we don't have CRT in the school. They changed the names. So Common Core now is called either a standards. In most schools now, instead of being called Common Core, they call it standards. CRT is now called CLC. SEL sometimes is called SLC. So be aware, because they can literally try to say, oh, I don't have that in my school, because they've changed the name. Does not mean it does not exist anymore. But you're right. That is absolute crap. And just, if we're putting our kids in front of a computer to just memorize the wrong material just so that they can get a financial gain, again, an absolute disrespect to our children and their futures. Oh, I got another one. Speaking of that, wait, can I load up another one while you're good? Okay. I wanted to show you guys another one, and here we go. And this is mindful practices. Just real quickly, everyone. Equity and SEL, better together. Right? The recent challenges of chaos of the pandemic has really heightened the importance of social emotional learning and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Separately, they are important. Together, they can help change the world. Right? I will be dropping these links for you guys so that you can research and read them yourselves. But our government is so proud to promote this. A nightmare.
Question number 3: how can parents, teachers, and communities work together to bring about meaningful changes in education?
Okay, this is a hard one, and I really want to bring you guys hope. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the best that I can tell you. Number one, you need to know that Title IX is a law, and that's one of the main ways our schools get funded. We hear Title I and Title IX, okay? And our schools will even put that on their website. We are proudly a Title I school, or we're proudly a Title IX school. That's a major, major way they get their grants and funding. One of the reasons that I don't get government grants is because of that law. I don't want to be mandated to teach this to the students. And by accepting those grants, I have to, by law, do that. Now, what can we do? Number one, I'm writing to presidents, and I'm writing to congressmen. I go visit my congressman, because I'll go to a school board and I'll ask them straight up, so how are you going to teach our children without using the Title IX law of funding? And they just don't have an answer for me, because they know that there are public schools, right? And our taxes go into that, and it goes up to the federal Department of Education, and then it's divvied out. And so I'm really concerned, and I'm trying not to say you don't have hope, but reach out to your congressman, reach out to your mayors, reach out to your politicians, and going, because I've never seen a law removed, but they get manipulated. So maybe they can take those things out and keep the basis of the law without it affecting the curriculum. But if our voices aren't shared and we're not screaming about it, they think everything is fine. Okay. So continue to make a stink. Number two is I saw parents that actually, when you guys need to pay way more attention to what your kids are learning. Ask for the lesson plans, ask for the syllabus for the year, so that you see what your kids are learning. When you go to have parent teacher conferences, ask. I say, I want to see this. I want to see what you're doing. Look and ask your kids about their homework. And then if you have, or if you disagree, then say, I need a separate assignment. I don't want my child partaking in this. And you guys can make that choice for yourselves. And then you need to fight these kind of laws like we see in California and other states that say, if you don't let the children have to tell you they want to change, right? And if you disagree with that, they're going to take your kids. You need to fight those laws and keep your parental rights. So hopefully I'm giving you some good news and yet some bad news. Like I said, this law has been in effect since 1972, and it's just getting worse or more manipulated, no matter, I guess, how you're looking at it, but more manipulated by each administration. So we need to take a part of and take action and be part of our communities and our local representatives, your congressmen. They're the ones who make the laws. Get very familiar with who they are. Start emailing them. That's a great way to talk to them without being in their face, but keeping them in check and going, so how are you going to remove this portion of this law? And then on a day-to-day basis, get active in your children's learning. Do not let them, I was always this way, guys, regardless of any law. I want to know exactly what you're teaching my children. And you probably even don't know this, but you have every right to ask for that lesson plan. You have every right to ask for that syllabus, so get active. And then you can always call a parent-teacher conference. You don't have to wait until, twice a year to do so. Say, I need to meet with you and the principal and find out what in the world's going on here, because my child came home with this. And if you're really uncomfortable with an assignment, make them give you an alternate assignment. So that's one way we can do things until things change. But even with a different president, everyone, know that these laws will still exist. Okay, and have been changed to be such. So we have to really make it aware that this has to change. And that's one thing. I go to conferences all over the country to talk about Title IX. So make that your mission.
To bring about meaningful changes in the education system, collaboration between parents, teachers, and communities is essential. Schools cannot operate in isolation if they are to meet the diverse needs of students, so the first step is open communication. Parents need to be informed and involved in what is being taught in the classroom. Transparent communication allows for a better understanding of what's happening in schools and creates a space for parents to voice concerns or offer input. Teachers, on the other hand, need support from both the administration and parents to implement changes effectively. Often, teachers are burdened with unrealistic expectations from curriculum requirements that do not address the needs of their students. By working with parents and the local community, teachers can focus more on the individual learning styles and needs of their students, rather than being forced to follow a one-size-fits-all model. Communities can help by advocating for educational reform that reflects their shared values and goals. This can take the form of attending school board meetings, voting on educational policies, or starting grassroots campaigns to push for the necessary changes. When communities stand behind parents and teachers, it creates a unified front that is much harder for the system to ignore. Another crucial area is parental involvement in curriculum development. Many parents feel blindsided when schools introduce controversial material without prior notice. By including parents in the decision-making process, schools can create a more balanced approach to education that respects family values while maintaining academic standards. It's also important for all parties to focus on what's best for the students. Schools should prioritize preparing children for the future by teaching them practical skills and knowledge that will help them succeed. Communities can support this by providing additional resources, mentorship programs, and extracurricular activities that complement what students are learning in school. Ultimately, meaningful change requires unity. Parents, teachers, and communities must work together to advocate for an education system that values academic excellence, life skills, and moral development. UP out.
Right. And I agree with that. Parents, we have to be active. I even sit there and it's so important for me to teach my children to read that I would have a family reading time during the dinner table. And not that I give them a lot of electronics, but I was like, all right, we're going to read since they were little. It is funny because even when they're teenagers, they would, think maybe they weren't interested, and they'd be like, so what book are you going to read now, Mom? I'm like, really? So they started to get to the point of enjoying that. And reading with me, and you guys can kind of choose that, but make it, hey, we're going to talk and we're going to read and we're going to do whatever and have fun around the dinner table versus everybody on their phone or not sitting together. Take back your family time. Ask them, hey, what are you learning today? Right? Get more involved. Very, very important.
Question number 4. In your opinion, should schools focus more on teaching values and morals alongside academic knowledge? If so, how can this be implemented?
So I think through the proper kind of curriculum and lesson plans and stuff like that, that you also learn a sense of ethics as you go. You learn, especially in a classroom, like with kindergarten and so forth, right? Slapping and fighting and whatever that's not, there's your morals. It's not good to hit. Respect somebody like you would respect yourself. So there are ways to do that without stepping on these toes, because right now, whether you like it or not, they have separated God and state, but yet they are teaching a different ideology that's almost like its own God in its own certain way. So why is that allowed and the others not? So if we're not going to have it, let's not have it. But is there a way to teach morals? Yes. By talking to you to respect each other. Would you like that to, happen to you? Therefore, right. But it has to start at a younger age, because if you start with teenagers, and this is why we start our school with teens, they've already developed this, this bullying kind of attitude. And we see this getting more and more explosion, but there should also be consequences for this as well. And so, yes, I think it's very important that we have this ability and kind of a fine line on how to do so. But we got to start with that whole golden rule: treat others as you'd like to be treated, and have consequences for actions, not, the everybody wins a prize kind of world that we live in right now and nobody gets in trouble. We need to do that, because I am seeing terrible things going on in schools right now where children are beating up teachers. They're slaughtering each other, because there is no moral ground. There's no respect for each other or for authorities or your elders. And yes, I think that should absolutely be brought back.
Yes, schools should focus more on teaching values and morals, alongside academic knowledge. Education is not just about facts and figures, it's about preparing children to become responsible, ethical adults who can contribute positively to society. However, teaching values in schools is a sensitive topic, as different families hold different beliefs, and it's important to approach this in a way that respects diversity while promoting core universal values like respect, honesty, and responsibility. The key to implementing values-based education is balance. Schools should not push a particular ideology, but they can teach values that are widely agreed upon. For example, lessons on integrity, kindness, hard work, and respect for others are values that most communities would support. Schools can incorporate these values into everyday classroom interactions and use stories, literature, and real-life examples to illustrate them. Another way to teach values is through character education programs. Many schools have successfully implemented such programs, which focus on developing traits like empathy, responsibility, and perseverance. These traits can be woven into academic subjects by encouraging students to think critically about ethical dilemmas, both historical and modern, and discuss the moral implications of their actions. Parents should also play an active role in supporting values education. When schools and families are on the same page, students get a consistent message about the importance of strong moral character. Schools can organize events, workshops, and discussions that bring parents and educators together to talk about how to best teach these principles. While teaching values is important, schools must also ensure that they're not overstepping their bounds. Values should not replace academic rigor but should be integrated into the learning experience. By finding the right balance, schools can educate students in both mind and character, preparing them for the complex challenges of the world outside the classroom. By focusing on teaching values alongside academics, we can help create a generation of leaders who not only excel in their fields but also make ethical decisions and contribute positively to society. UP out.
I totally agree with that too, because I was just sitting there thinking, but this ideology that they want to teach, right? Isn't that manipulating moral character? Right? And giving them a different sense of morals and living. And I was thinking about what we do with my school too. Like I said, I teach history, an English and history class combined. And during creative writing, I'm always asking ethical questions, like about the characters we're writing about, and how would that play in back and forth. So even in my own experience, and number one, how do I treat you? I want to be treated right. So we can teach a sense of respect, which should be taught to those little 3-year-olds. Instead of pronouns, we should be teaching them to respect their classmates, right? Right, starting from that age. But in the high schools level, that I've already got these kids that have been manipulated for so long, we do this throughout creative writing and making them think through the lens of their characters they're writing about, and teaching them a sense of ethics in that aspect. As I'm also trying to demonstrate, I think teachers too, need to do all they can to demonstrate and have a sense of respect for each other in the environment. But with that being said, like you guys are saying in the chat, if the school does not support that and there's no consequences for that, then the kids already know who's really running that class, as we're watching multiple different social medias on a kid beating up their teacher or whatever. Because there is no consequence for that. That must change, right? So parents demand that for sure. But then again, like you said, also, this really needs to be something that you're instilling in your children at home. Teach them to have character and morals.
Question number 5. What role does faith or personal belief play in shaping the education system, and how can it be integrated respectfully in diverse communities?
So that's really, in my school, it's a little different because it's a private school, right? Do I sit there and preach God or the Bible or whatever and teach you about religion? No, but I guarantee you every single person in the school knows I believe in God, right? Because I'm always talking about it, right? But in our public school systems, you can use certain things like, I have faith in you. I believe that you can do that. There are certain kind of words that you can use to show that these kids, to build the fact of having faith, whether you're believing in God or not. Faith is a huge, huge building block for them, because it means that you have a goal and you can obtain it, almost like I believe in you. So there are a way to have this kind of aspect in our education without dumping religion into the scenario. Private schools tend to be a little bit more opening for that, because you can choose and decide what school you want to go to based off of your religious faith. But in our public system, unfortunately, that does not exist. Jesus, they don't even say the Pledge of Allegiance most of the time because the word God is in there. Well, we do at mine, but and that's I guess apparently a problem, or they just take it out. But one thing I think about diverse communities, and I find this funny because I remember being at Columbia and I was in Senate, and I was talking about how I celebrate diversity. And they're like, what are you talking about? And you guys might freak out about that. I go, but this is exactly what the United States is. We are a melting pot of cultures. And instead of sitting here having division between ourselves, why are we not learning about each other? I've been all over the world, and I can tell you that we all the same. We get up, we go to work, we love our families, we eat. What's different is our cultures and our traditions and the things we celebrate and are not, right? Or our languages and stuff. But why not celebrate this and learn about each other and highlight those, instead of saying, okay, well, you're good because you're this color, or you're bad because you're this color, or whatever, and having this huge division instead of a celebration. So by teaching this kind of idea to respect each other, to learn about each other, and to celebrate each other is a wonderful thing, without creating that, oh, by the way, you need to change because you're no good this way, right? I don't want to put that part in, but just be like, oh my gosh, okay, so your background is this, right? But using certain things and ideas like I have faith in you, I believe in you, are a great way to integrate that without having this whole aspect of bringing religion into our public education and teaching our children that they can accomplish great things in their future.
Faith and personal belief have always played an important role in shaping the education system, especially in communities where religion and spirituality are core aspects of daily life. However, in today's increasingly diverse world, finding a way to integrate faith into education without alienating others is a challenge. It's possible to respect and honor the beliefs of various students while maintaining a secular educational environment that serves everyone. One way to integrate faith respectfully is by allowing students the freedom to express their beliefs in a way that is personal to them. For example, schools should respect religious holidays and customs, allowing students to practice their faith without fear of discrimination. Schools can also create safe spaces for students to discuss their beliefs in a respectful, open environment, fostering understanding among peers. It's also important for schools to teach about different faiths in a way that is educational, not promotional. World religions can be incorporated into history and social studies curriculums, giving students a well-rounded understanding of how different belief systems have shaped cultures and societies. This approach helps students develop respect and tolerance for others, which is critical in today's globalized world. Parents and communities can also contribute by working with schools to ensure that faith is included in ways that align with the values of the community. This might involve offering faith-based extracurricular activities or clubs, where students can explore their beliefs more deeply without feeling that those beliefs are being forced upon others. While it's essential to maintain separation between church and state, there's room for faith to be a part of the educational experience, especially when it comes to teaching values like empathy, compassion, and service to others. These are values that many faiths promote and can be emphasized in a way that benefits all students. By integrating faith and personal belief respectfully, schools can create a more inclusive environment that honors diversity while staying true to the mission of providing a well-rounded education. UP out.
I am so glad you said that. You reminded me of two things. Number one, the art history is a great way to learn about different religions through art. And that's one of the things I like to do without having to throw the religions or the ideologies on them, because you can explore that. Because art has really been a founder of history for over 40 something or 1,000 years plus, right? From caveman drawing, cave drawings and so forth, right? So it's a great way to show all these different things through paints and through art and through whatever architecture, yet exploring a religion without putting those ideologies on that. Like, hey, you have to read the Quran, or hey, you have to read the Bible, right? And that's one way we explore it. And another thing, because you were talking about different things with children, my second grader, I had one second grader that came up to me and she's like, I would like to write a book about God. And she asked my permission because she wanted to explore her faith, and it was a writing assignment. And then I allowed her to do that. So not only did she write this book, in her mind, God gave us angels, God gave us prayer, God gave us family. And then she did the pages, she drew the pages and everything herself and made this actual book. And it was going to be a gift for her grandmother for Christmas. So allowing those different moments where you let the children being able to explore their own personal beliefs, and giving them assignments that can, have that opening and that availability for them to do so and explore those options without being hindered. So those are two ways that you can have that in your schools without promoting a certain kind of ideology in any form onto our children. So those are great things that you were saying, but you're like, oh, I do that. That's what I was saying, Zach. I was like, okay, right. And those are two examples, at least in my school, that we do that. Exactly.
Any final words on today's discussion?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So let's kind of give you in some hope. I am so impressed with the families that were able to see this and start standing up. Even if we can't make huge significance of change at the moment, we are making strides. So right now that Title IX did come into play because we saw it with sports, and we saw athletes standing up against it and bringing at least that into a highlight that there's a problem with this law, even though it's kind of only covering sports at this moment, but it's the start. And by continuing to go to these meetings, continuing to be involved with your children, their education, having that voice, asking for those meetings, and stuff like that, we're finding out that the more we resist and do not comply and have our own voice, the more we're going to be able to change things, right? I was just talking on my podcast yesterday, about the circumstances that we're in this world. The more we share things too, that because sometimes you don't even have to be in person, you can share it out on social media, but it's saying we're aware of this, we're not taking this, this is not acceptable to us. And all of a sudden, when they find out the majority is not in the favor of this, we see change. So have some hope. It may not be a brighter day at this moment, may not be a brighter day in this year, but if you continue to keep working on it, it will change until, and keep fighting and tell others about it too. Don't just keep this information to yourself, inform others. And that's why I say about social media or your friends and your family, so that they're aware and we can continue to be the majority voice here. One other final note, without sounding too sad, I like the idea of breaking up the Department of Education, but I just did an interview with a group out of California. And she says, as great as that is, our governor is Newsom. And he's full board ahead on this agenda, right? This is why it's so important to get involved locally. We do have a presidential election coming up here, everyone. But if you do have, let's say, the president of your choice, but your governor's not, on the opposite side, right? Or your mayor is, or your sheriff is, or your town council are, and I encourage you to go to town hall meetings, by the way, and make it a date night for everyone. But we have to make sure that the people we want, in office that want to make that change, if that's truly how we want our country to be, then you have to be active. If we're a republic, that means of the people, by the people, and for the people. That means, guess what? Get off your ears, start making a difference, share your voices, stand united, because the majority will make a change. Right. And last thing I'll say, Zach, all youth are possible. I got banned off of multiple different things for that hashtag. So continue to use that. Right? They have a certain idea of what youth are possible. And I guess what? Doesn't matter where you come from, what your background is, where, what your neighborhood is, what the color of your skin is. Guess what? All youth are possible. Hashtag and share that out for me, everyone. Right.
Thank you for joining me in today's discussion on the school system and why we need serious reform. It's clear that our children's future depends on the changes we make now. Whether it's standing up for traditional values, advocating for practical life skills in the classroom, or working together as a community, we all have a role to play. If we want to ensure that the next generation is strong, capable, and prepared, it starts with us taking action today. Please, if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. I truly appreciate all of you who continue to support this community. We're in this together, and with your help, we can make a real difference. I love you all, and I'll leave you with this verse from the King James Bible: train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22 verse 6, KJV.
Thank you so much, Zach, for having me. Right. If I can be
Hey community, Unique Prepping has partnered up with Hunter Brothers Coffee. It's a veteran-owned coffee company out of Pennsylvania. They sell across the world, and have light, medium, dark roasts, ground or whole beans, and even flavored coffee. If you like to order coffee, use my link in the description of this video or go to my LinkTree. At checkout you'll get a 9% discount. Order you some coffee and help support veterans in need and help get service dogs as well. Thank you, and let's help our veterans since they helped keep our country safe.
moves on your chess piece, always on the grind. In this game called life, gotta sharpen up the mind. Unique prepping, got the vision locked and loaded. Every challenge that arises, I'm determined, I'm devoted. Stay ready for the call, enter life's demands, and we'll rise together, we'll take our stands. Unique prepping, it's more than a show. We're building foundations, we're ready to grow. Like, share, comment, let your voice be known. Together we can thrive, we're never alone. Thanks for watching. Every view, every like, your support is the fire that keeps me hyped. Comment, depth, and insight, share the vision wide. This community's growing and we'll ride this tide. So go ahead and subscribe, don't miss a beat. Tune in next time, let's make this complete. Unique prepping, it's more than a show. We're building foundations, we're ready to grow. Like, share, comment, let your voice be known. Together we can thrive, we're never alone. Pushing forward, let that fire ignite. See you next time, let's keep it bright. Like, share, comment. Prepping, it's more than a show. We're building foundations, we're ready to grow. Like, share, comment, let your voice be known. Together we can thrive, we're never alone. You pushing forward, let that fire ignite. See you next time, let's make this complete. Unique prepping, it's more than a show. We're building foundations, we're ready to grow. Like, share, comment, let your voice be known. Together we can thrive, we're never alone. Never alone. Never alone. Keep pushing forward, let that fire ignite. See you next time, let's keep it bright. Yeah. Let that fire ignite. See you next time, let's keep it bright.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Matthew 5 verse 9 KJV.